Hickok 45 here. Let's load this German Mauser and shoot it. Nice. A miss. Sweet. Let's try something a little closer now. Like that jug of water. And a 2-liter. That should take care of him. Yes, a German Mauser. Going to tell you all about it. Want to thank our sponsors first, Federal Premium. We're going to be shooting mostly Federal ammunition. They actually load 8mm Mauser and a nice little soft point. Be good for hunting in one of these things. We appreciate their sponsorship. And budsgunshop.com. Be sure you go to the links and check out all the good things going on there with shipmyguns.com and eGunner and everything that's going on with Bud's Gun Shop. We appreciate your support, and they do too. So yes, we have a real German Mauser. You know, this is made in Germany, Oberndorf. All right, this is the one you might have seen on Facebook that I posted recently. It is well, made in 1943. I've kind of wanted a better German Mauser, and I have to qualify the term better, of course. I have a pretty good one. I wanted one, if I could find it and it wasn't too crazy expensive, a matching, all matching serial number Mauser. And that's basically what we have here. It's a matching. And according to 2 different experts in the field, it is pretty much original finish and everything. So I know what I don't know, and I had some folks look at it before I bought it even, and I'm very pleased and very confident it is what it's supposed to be. So because boy, with these things you really need to study them. And even if you do, you really need to be an expert, because there are so many fakes, and I didn't realize how many there were. I just didn't realize it. But the more you study it, if you're into these, you know what I'm talking about. And if you have studied them at all, or quite a bit, you really know what I'm talking about, because you know more about than I do. But I knew my limitations, and I wasn't about to jump into a better one that was supposedly, you know, matching serial numbers, unless I had somebody that could verify it, look at it, an objective third party and all that. So that's what I did. Got this in Tulsa. And again, a shout out to the gun boards, the K98 forum on the gun boards, and then the other location website, the K98 forum. People at those sites, you know, a lot of folks there know what they're doing. They know these things, and there's a lot of good information there. So I appreciate their help. And like I say, I've learned enough to be dangerous in the last few months about these things. I used to think, ooh, a Mitchell's Mauser would be a great thing to get sometime. And I think that might be what my other one is. That's not for sure. But I've learned that those are not necessarily very well respected in the Mauser community, people who really know Mausers. Now, they're fine guns, and I don't know whether that is one or not. I have it out here today just to do a little comparison. But, you know, it's not a matching gun. But, I mean, the parts on it are, you know, real. You know, so it's a great gun, great shooter, has a Timney trigger in it, and be a great hunter, and probably a better shooter than the other one, has a better trigger, okay? And, you know, it's 43. The thing is, with some of these, there's so much money to be made by messing with them, by, like, shaving them and then restamping them, that you just don't know for sure what you've got unless you really, really know these things well. And I don't want to condemn Mitchell's Mausers. I don't know everything, but boy, if you study the boards, the forums, and look at the threads on that, they are really looked down upon in terms of collectability. Now, as a shooter, they're fine, but there's so much going on, and I don't know that they're doing that, but there are people, if you've got a collectible item that is worth you know, $1,000, $2,000, $5,000, whatever it is, obviously there's going to be some unscrupulous people who try to fake that. Just like a coin or a Colt Single Action Army, whatever it is. Y'all know that. If you're going to collect something that's gets into an expensive area, could be a piece of glass or anything that's got some certain initial on it, makes it way more valuable, there's going to be somebody who tries to fake that, right, and make some money. So that's what you really got to watch with these things, for sure. So this is cool. It's not a museum piece, but it is, and to show you what I was talking about, you can see on that bolt the serial numbers. There's one right there. There's one here on the cocking, the safety. There's on the back of it, and I'll be taking the bolt out and show you. So you got all those numbers, serial numbers. You got the serial number right here on the receiver. Up here on the barrel bands, it matches on both of them. It's underneath, it's on the sight, it's in the stock. I've had the stock off. It's inside the stock. So it's on the floor plate of the magazine. It's on this piece, you know. So the serial number, the Germans were sticklers for numbering everything, especially before the war, World War II, and then into the war. Latter part of the war, they quit numbering some things, and they had to use some cost-cutting. They take some cost-cutting steps, as you can imagine. This thing started going badly for them, you know, whenever it became really bad, of course, but 43, 44, 45, progressively worse for them. They were still making them, but they used more stamped parts. For example, this front barrel band is a stamped piece, whereas on that one over there, you can tell it's different. The H barrel band, I think it's called, in the front, it's made out of, you know, metal. I guess milled, I don't know. But this is just a stamped piece in 44 they went to. And so, you know, probably does just as well, but they took some measures there to save costs. So anyway, this one actually doesn't even look as good as that one in a lot of ways, but this one's cool because it's all matching, and that this is the way this thing came, you know, from Oberndorf. It was made in Oberndorf, Germany, and that was another. The BYF tells you that, and the date 43, and that's kind of what I was looking for, and found it in Tulsa, and really pleased with it. It's not perfect, you know. It's where the strap comes through. That little hole's been filled and some things, and the stock is, you know, it's one of the laminated stocks, and a lot of them they were actually considered sturdier in a lot of ways. They're heavier, less likely to crack apart maybe than a walnut stock. But you know, there are pros and cons of both. But so that's pretty safe. I don't think anybody's messed with the stock or sanded on it. It looks like just the natural oils of it. I don't know. And that's what attracts people sometimes when they see one of these that's just beautiful, and the stock is freshly sanded and everything. It's been reblued, and that's all fine. But it's like a coin. Once you mess with it, then that takes away the collector's value. You'll see them. I posted pictures of this on Facebook, and someone said, oh, it's obviously not original. The bolt's been reblued, or it's been blued. The bolt's not supposed to be blued. Well, newsflash, the bolts were blued. Metal parts are blued. I think the butt plates were not. They were not blued. So again, if you see that, that's been done later by somebody, you know. So anyway, it's kind of cool because it's all there, and it shoots well, and it's a Mauser. You know, they've got the serial numbers under the sights and just everything. That's it's like that Swedish Mauser. I brought it out just for comparison. It's the same way. It's got numbers all over the place where you wouldn't even expect someone to have numbers on a firearm. And I brought it out also to show you. Let me move it over here. The comparison. This gun. In the video we did on that other one, I talked a little bit about this. I know a little bit more now. I wanted to share some of that. The K98, referred to as the Car 98K, the Carabiner 98 Kurz, which means carbine 98, the year it came about, and then Kurz for short, you know, because it's shorter than this. So it's called a lot of things. It's K98, Model 98. But it grew out from, of course, the Mauser's been around since the 1880s. There was an 88 model, and I'm not as familiar with it, but the 98 came about, and guess when? 1898, and it was a long affair, long as this Swedish Mauser, or longer. This thing was made in 1911, so this is they're similar to it in a lot of ways. It has a straight bolt. See, that's one of the big differences. Wanted to show you the length. The K98 was handier in size, and they turned the bolt down, the curved bolt, supposedly making it faster to operate. I think John might argue with you on that. He loves his VZ24. I think it's a model, the Czechoslovakian model, can shoot it really, really fast with a straight bolt. But and I like the straight bolt on this one, actually. It's a great shooter. But so they made some changes, but it's still basically the 98, which was the German official, rifle from 1898 to about 1935, when they adopted this, the K98. Cut it down a little bit, and made a few changes, but basically it's the same rifle. So essentially the Model 98 is from 1898 till the end of World War II, 45. They made them, just slight changes, Actually, they made them before 98. So the Mauser, Paul Mauser, his brother Wilhelm, I think was his name, what they came up with in, I guess it was early 1880s, it's still alive today. Pretty amazing, all these years. Because if you look at your average hunting rifle today, or your quality hunting rifles, Remington 700, whatever it might be, and look at the bolt, and it's going to be just about like this. It's not going to have that big extractor on it, probably, like this one does, that big long extractor. That probably is the only major difference. It's going to be the Mauser, based on the Mauser bolt, just like the '03 Springfield and most quality bolt action rifles. They got it right the first time. Pretty amazing, huh? Let's take a shot with it. I wanted you to see that butt plate. They went to that kind of butt plate in, I think it was around 1940. And that was a little bit of a cost-cutting thing too, but it cups around the wood, and so if the laminates start coming apart or the walnuts started cracking, I think it was to help keep it from splitting apart. And so I wanted you to see that before I covered up with this and give myself a little extra length. And again, it's not for recoil. The Mauser is it's a sweet shooting gun. I've been shooting a lot more lately. I'm reminded how nice it is. It does not really kick that much. It's a heavier bullet. Generally it's about a 196 grain bullet. I think was kind of the official round they settled on in the military. And that's almost 200 grains for you folks in Kentucky. 196. That's a pretty heavy bullet. And it's not a giant, it's not a Magnum, 300 Magnum or anything. And the bigger, heavier bullets tend to just push you a little bit more. And it's not quite as loud. You don't have that incredible muzzle blast. So it's a pleasant firearm to shoot, actually. And especially if I get my face away from that sight a little bit more, I really like it. Let's shoot some good old Federal. So this is what you would carry maybe if you were hunting with this rifle. I'm trying to save these clips. Those things are not cheap. I didn't realize that. Let's put one on this 2-liter here. Somebody might want a Mauser perforated 2-liter. Put it right in the middle if we can. All right, let's put one on the cap. That's close enough. Oh, how about a little pot smoking? Let's see if it'll do that. All right. Brought out an old propane tank that has been relegated to the range. It's not appropriate to use, so I'm going to put a round through it. See if it'll explode. Nah, it's been empty for a long time. Been empty. Oh man, that thing is sweet to shoot. I'm going to shoot 5 more. I'm going back over there to those plates, I think. Yeah, I'm going to show you something else about it. All right. Try that little plate. Knocked him around in it. And a 2-liter or 2 here. That is cool. I mean, this rifle is still intact from the Great War, World War II. And here I am shooting 2-liters with it again. Or I say again, with these historic rifles, but I'm not going to shoot this thing too much, but I'm going to shoot it occasionally, and it's just really neat to have something that is still intact and kind of in its natural state from those days. What I was going to show you too is, some of you might be wondering what that hole is about. Well, as I understand, the Germans were just like the Americans at that time. If you've seen any movies, they were chain smokers for the most part. And so they'd just stick their cigarette in that, keep it lit, you know, and if they needed to, they could even pick it up and fire it, you know, and, you know, still have their cigarette stuck in there. And I would guess about 3% of you believe that, probably, right? Now, let me show you what that is. I was thinking, right? So the bolt, if you want, when you're taking your bolt apart to clean it, well, first of all, let me show you how you take it out here properly. This doesn't have the hold open, so you have to push down on the magazine, you know, when you're messing with that. You got, now this I've seen called a bolt stop, and it's also an extractor housing, or extractor, you know, housing anyway. And which I had to replace. It did have one problem. The extractor was broken. The extractor spring was broken. So I learned a lot about that. I had to take that off and then do some gunsmithing and order one, and I fixed that. But if you're going to take it out, it's easier, I think, to put the safety up. Take this out. Pull that up. All right, the bolt. And then, of course, occasionally you want to clean your bolt. And that's what that's all about. That's not for putting your cigarette in. Yeah, you were fooled, weren't you? So if you're going to take your bolt apart, you push that little button, screw off the back, the shield, and all that, the cocking piece there, okay. And of course, clean that out and all that. And you notice you have, there's holes or vents for if you have a cartridge give loose and blow up or something in there, it comes back into that and goes downward. So that was a safety issue there. Use that big extractor. Amazing. And there's a serial number on that too. You see it's 65. They put the last two digits of the serial number in little places where the rest wouldn't fit. See right there on the extractor even. So even the extractor hasn't been replaced. Then on the back of the cocking piece, you know, and just all right there. So they're nuts about that. It's kind of neat. So this is what this is for. You want to take the bolt apart, push down on that. Takes more strength than I have, and then you pull this off. All right, that way you don't damage the firing pin. Right, and that comes out. And notice this: even the firing pin has a serial number, 1265. How's that for a firing pin? That was another thing about the Model 98, the 98, the one-piece big firing pin like this and everything. Just a well-made rifle in so many ways. And you stick that back in there, putting it back together. Let's assume I've cleaned it. And takes a little bit of leverage here, and then of course this is your safety, you know, so it's easy to clean all that. Just take it apart, especially if you're shooting ammo you think might be corrosive, because I clean it every time I shoot anyway, whether it's corrosive or not. All right, get my muscles ready here. All right. It slides on there a certain way, comes around, back together. But it does take a fair amount of force, and then you push down on the safety, and that works fine. And you put it back together. So these old bolt guns, as many of you know, are pretty interesting. And this is one of the iconic bolt guns of the world, no doubt about it. So she should be ready to go. Get it back together. Your extractor's in the right place there. Pull out on the extractor housing there to get it in, then push that on that. Ready to go again. Safety's still up. All right. So pretty neat. These are fun to mess with. They really are. So like I say, this kind of evolved, you know, from the regular 98, a little bit shorter, handier, and then was used extensively. Now we know that in Germany, and you may know more about it than I do, all the various firearms that were used, but the general infantry firearm, you know, was this. You know, just like with us, it was the Garand, you know, in the British, the Enfield, and those rifles. But there were other weapons, machine guns, of course, submachine guns, you know, that were employed. So let's put a couple more rounds in. Oh yeah, this is a fun round to shoot. And you know, it is, you saw a recent video about cartridges and not using the wrong cartridge and everything. And I was brought to task about throwing the Mauser 8mm Mauser in there with the 30 caliber rounds and talking about it like it was 30 caliber, Well, I mean, I know it's not 30. In fact, yeah, I stuck some of these in my pocket. What I was really getting at there is you do want to be careful because, like, it's not exactly 30. It's what, 30? It's 792 by 57. It's a little bigger, but if you're just looking at a bunch of rounds on your shooting table or somewhere, those all look kind of like 30 caliber, rifle cartridges, don't they? Like, okay, those all look like they would fit. Well, no, one of them, there's a Enfield, which is 303. There's the Mauser, and then here's a 30-06, there's a 308. So none of them are actually just 30 caliber. They're all a little bit bigger than 30 caliber. But what I was getting at is they all kind of look like the same thing. So that's what you want to be wary of. Put those back in my pocket so I don't get them mixed up. Because all we have is 8mm out here. Let's take a couple more shots here. Cool rifle. Don't want to lose that. Safety up, prevents you from firing it, but you can still work the bolt. I could, clean out the magazine that way, or push it on over again and it locks up like that. Okay, so let's just shoot a couple more rounds. Oh, we still have some pots here in the vicinity. Pretty cool. Nice. Back over there. Oh, some cinder block activity. Yeah, 8mm will do it. Just 5 rounds. It's not a Lee Enfield. You don't get 10 rounds or anything. So this was known for you hear people brag on the Mausers, all the time. And you may have a little bit of an aversion to these firearms used by the Germans during that war and some of the things that went on. Again, we have to be careful. We assign too much emotion, I think, to an inanimate object, but I understand that. But it doesn't bother me that it was used against us. I mean, my favorite firearms are generally American firearms, I guess, but it's just a firearm. It's interesting. The people that carried these, they were carrying them the same reason that, for the most part, that our GIs were carrying a Garand or an A3 Springfield, because they were told to and where to go and what to do, and that sort of thing. Again, it's an inanimate object, but this very gun might have killed somebody in my family, or your family or something. It's just weird that it was actually used. It's always very interesting to have replicas of firearms that were used in major wars and that kind of thing. And then it's even more interesting to have an actual firearm that was used. It's not a replica of anything. It was there. So it's pretty fascinating when you think about it. Even though there are millions of them out there. There are millions of them. But again, the beauty of the Mauser, the reason people are always, and we went over this in one video, I think, but the reason people are so taken with this is it's a good lockup, it's a controlled feed, picks up the round, and you got these 2 lugs on either side. They go up right into there, and when you turn the bolt, they lock into a mortised area on either side there. And so, I mean, that thing it's really locked. It's actually locking. Yeah, it goes into the side and locks up into here and down there. And then you got a safety lock here on the back, a lug on the back of the bolt that locks in to a mortised area right there. So it's a very solid lockup. And a lot of the bolt actions of the day had the lugs were on the back, so they locked up on the back, which wasn't as strong, like the Krag and some others. So it's just a very strong lockup for that bolt, and it makes for a very accurate rifle. So that's why it's still used today by so many people, or at least essentially the same thing. BFI or BYF Oberndorf. Go for that little one again. All right. Go back to the other one again. Very, very sweet shooters. They really are. So you see, even after that shooting, it's still in one piece. And what else did I not tell you about it? Oh, the sight hood. If you've done much shooting, you know the beauty or the advantage of having a hooded sight like that, because light really plays with your front sight. It just really does. And then also that hood, it keeps the light consistent, and it also protects it, you know, knocking it around. And they went to those in about 1939, I think it was. And so you might have one where it's just off of the gun, but or it might be an earlier one where they just didn't use them. Okay. Oh, there's something else I was going to show you. The cleaning rod. Now this might surprise some of you. Let me make sure the bolt's open. Yeah, it's open. We're clear. Before I start turning it around here too much, I'm going to take this out and show you something that will just amaze you. It's another one of those illusions, you know, those distortions that we're always messing with you on, like the magazines. See, there's your cleaning rod, and that's it. That's it, you know. Okay. Well, look at that. It doesn't reach all the way down. The other cool thing about the Mausers is that they don't get dirty down here, this part of the barrel, only out here. Imagine that. Okay, how many of you believe that? Nah, not many. Actually, that was intentional, and it took 3 of these. You would screw them together, and you and your buddies in your outfit, and it's my turn to clean my gun. I'd borrow theirs and put them together and clean my gun, and then, you know, pass it around. You take it back apart and then put your piece back in here. So it taught togetherness, working together, right? So yeah, that was that. That's what that's about. Too short to clean your gun, so you had to talk your buddies into helping you out. There we go. And the other thing you haven't seen yet, that I wanted a nice bayonet for it too. Got that in Tulsa. The gun show. I keep saying Tulsa. Some of you don't know what that means, I guess, but those that have been following us a while and watching my postings and everything about the Tulsa gun show know that I went to the Tulsa gun show about a month ago. So you notice too that, interesting, this one slips over the cleaning rod. That was kind of an interesting way to, goes over the cleaning rod and just clicks in. Okay. So that's a pretty good deer hunting rig right there. You know, I don't know how you get much better than that, because you can shoot the deer and field dress it all with the same object, right? The same item. So let's shoot it with that. Let's see if it'll fire. Okay, with this Federal soft point. These clips work so much better than some that I've had. These nickel plated ones, I highly recommend those. They're so smooth. All right, we are really ready for battle. What if this would go through that and hit that bowling pin? Sure did. 2 liter in a bowling pin, 1 bullet. Let's try that propane. All right. All right. I need a hole. Let's see with the bayonet if it affects accuracy. Oh, it shoots just fine with the bayonet or without it. Wow. Now you saw some of these markings and these proof marks. Some of those are called Waffenants. Something. There's an organization that just is in Germany, was responsible for all the proof marking of these things. There's actually one on the stock back here that matches. It's not easily. It's there. And they're on various points on the firearm, and that changes from year to year. So that's what I was saying. You really need to know these things, or know somebody who really knows them, if you're planning on spending more than $500 or $600 or $700 on one, because you can get a good shooter, really a great gun like that one over there. Just a great gun that you'll really enjoy in that price range or less. But if you're going to go a little bit more, one that has collectible value, beyond just being a good shooter, you just depending on how much you're going to spend, you really need to study it and know what you're doing. Because every year, the more I read, the more I realize I don't know. Like every year, things would change in the manufacture of these, and where they would stamp them, and what what kinds of stampings they used, and all of that. So there's just book after book after book on them, of course. And like the number right here on the barrel, 101, and there's a Nazi marking. It just shows that the factory where it was made. The 43 is the year. Just mean different things. So, and this one doesn't have import marks on it. So it was, I don't know, brought back by somebody somehow got into this country. Some of them were cut down and shipped back. They call those duffel cuts, where I think they would cut like underneath that barrel band, I believe right there, just cut the stock. I'm not sure how that helped necessarily, but so they could ship them back, and they weren't quite as long. I guess they took the barrel out and all that, and the stock I guess is the longest piece once you get the action and barrel out, so anyway, they'd cut it and ship it back, and then you still put it back together, and I don't know how you reattach it, but or if people even do, you just put the clamp on there tight. So there's different things to look out for, definitely. But again, it's like buying if you're going to go buy a silver dollar, you've never had a silver dollar, you thought it'd be cool just to own one, you can go buy one today, and they're what, 20, 25 bucks or something. Doesn't matter when it was made, what the date's on it, even what condition it's in, if you just want a silver dollar, because they're so cool. I say that because I know a little bit about silver dollars. I used to be into those a little bit. But if you're going to go get one that's and spend $300 for it, you better know all about grading and special little markings and all that sort of thing. So that's kind of the thing I wanted to warn you about on these things. And I guess that was about it. This one was blued. And they blued the bolts in 1944, 43 and everything. And they went to a phosphate kind of a parkerizing later, I think. And as I say, they in 44 they really started cutting costs because things got worse and worse for them. I think all the barrel bands became stamped. The floor plate here became stamped. I think the trigger guard was stamped. These are not stampings here, I think. They became stampings in 44, 45. Things got really bad, and they were still making these firearms, so they were cutting costs wherever they could. But now, for what I've read, they only cut costs in terms of those sorts of things. They didn't start throwing the barrels together to where they weren't accurate or anything like that. It was just in the superficial things that don't matter that much. Well, I don't know about superficial, if that's the right word, but whether your floor plate is stamped or not it's not that critical, or that barrel band and all that. So pretty cool guns, and pretty interesting. Like I say, they started turning down the bolts on the K98 because the faster to operate, and you could put a scope up here, because if that bolt is sticking right up into the scope, that doesn't work so well. See, even that one is close to a scope. If you had a scope sitting there, it would be right up almost against it, and it's a turned down bolt. So those were some of the differences between the Gewehr 98 and the K98. Pretty cool gun. This is kind of a prized possession, I guess you'd say, of mine. It's one I'll not hopefully ever sell or anything, just because it's pretty cool. Matching. It's all matching, and it's a shooter. I'm going to take good care of it, but I am going to shoot it. I'm going to keep the history alive and take a few shots with it now and then. Okay, so the Carabiner 98K, or the Car 98K, or the K98, or the Model 98, called by a lot of different things, but as I always say, a rose, well, no, it was Bill Shakespeare said that, a rose by any other name is still as sweet, right? Good old K98. This one is the BYF, made in Oberndorf, Germany. Life is good. We'd like to thank one of our sponsors, SDI, the Sonoran Desert Institute. SDI has fully accredited distance learning programs where you can get certified in gunsmithing or even an associate's degree in firearms technology. Of course, the study includes hands-on experience, which is important, of course. So check it out. Go to sdi.edu or just click on the link in the description. Okay. And also would like to remind you to check out the Hickok 45 Facebook page and the Hickok 45 and Son channel and its Facebook page, as well as Gun Culture Radio on iTunes. Now remember all this, because I'm coming to your house randomly over the next year or two to give you a quiz on it. Okay? Thank you.